Hi,
All right.
Rose. Hi.
Hi. Hi, welcome to Shelf Starters. Today we're talking about Piers Plowman, which is one I had not heard of until we did this, and then now I feel like I'm hearing it everywhere.
It's so weird, isn't it, how that works? But same here.
Yeah.
Now it's like every day. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange. A car salesman once told me that once you buy a car or you're interested in a particular
everywhere.
car, you'll see that car everywhere you go. So maybe it's the same with Piers. Who knows?
Feels like that.
So anyway, here we have this allegorical kind of tale, I guess, with in
verse.
in poetic form, exactly, with much alliteration.
Yes. And I think the translation was really good. Who is the translator that we've got here? Because it was very readable.
Yes,
let me read that to us.
And that's a great
question. E.T. Donaldson.
Yeah. So it was extremely easy to read, really, in the scheme of things. And do you know what, Rosie? It really reminded me of Coleridge and Kubla Khan. Even the whole premise of the dream, and then, dream sequence, and, that's how I then saw this utopic world. It was kind of like that. And that beginning, even the beginning when it was talking about the broad bank and lay lazily looking into the water, that was so Coleridge-ish to me. I thought that was really, really interesting. So, maybe this is where he was inspired in terms of the use of alliteration, the whole idea of the imagery, and this utopic vision concept. That I thought that was all really Coleridge. Really Coleridge.
Yeah. But I think that I hadn't thought of that, but I think that's maybe why I liked the prologue better than the rest of it.
I much preferred the prologue. I agree. The passes, if that's how you say it, plural, the sections, they didn't feel nearly as strong, did they?
Well, I think it's because it's just what we like more than anything else, because like we like the whole setting the scene and like that kind of imagery stuff, whereas once you get into the story, it's much more about like religion, and it's got like very much a point to every section. Like there's a moral that is like driven home, and that is just something that you and I have not really traditionally been that interested in.
No, and that whole personification concept. I'm not an enormous fan of that, but of course that's a dating thing as well. Like, that's the style of like a mystery play.
Yeah, well, we're very keen to get to the mystery plays. I think that would be cool.
And that's a very much a stylistic and accepted tradition that, of course, is a long way back from where we're at now. But nonetheless, anyway, it was highly readable. Prologue was really good. That was definitely the highlight, sure.
So I think the hard part is because it says everywhere in like all the readings that we have that people struggle with this text, which made me feel better about it. I struggled with this text.
Well, actually, it made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, it made me feel a lot better.
But it's not just me. Everybody thinks this is difficult.
Yeah, and I think it's not the language. It's just that it's confusing because there are so many dreams. Like it's dreams within dreams, and there's so many characters because like you start off with just Will, the narrator, and then you get the Holy Church, and like you think you're just going to have, I guess we've had like with Gower and a few others, like we've had a couple of those kind of allegorical figures, but at some point there are just so many of them that you lose track.
There's everything. There's grace and hunger and truth, and there's a gamut.
Sense, reason, like it's just every single like adjective that you can think of has been thrown into an actual person, and that was quite hard to keep track of, I thought.
Yeah, me too. I agree. So
I think that's what people struggle with. Also, that I think there's at least a couple of times in the full work where there are dreams within dreams. So it's not even just like that he goes into a dream and then he comes out again and then goes into another dream. There's dreams in dreams, which just is like a whole inception thing. It's really hard to keep track of.
No, it's definitely, that's a long way past Coleridge. He at least just stuck to the dream. This, definitely difficult. But nonetheless, enlightening, sure. A whole kind of...
some interesting points. So like very much about the church being like religion being about doing good for other people,
Yes.
And its whole concept of finding truth, which is like running throughout it's like a quest, really, the whole larger work. Which that was interesting. And then like about false religion. So like the friars, it's got these friars who are just trying to get money off people and not like actually.
Yeah, the tax kind of concept. Yeah.
And then the concept of like just being able to buy pardons.
Yes. Yeah,
and that's like true repentance.
A really, really interesting line of thought, isn't it? Running in church.
Corruption.
Start talking about that. But it was an insight, wasn't it? But that's how you think of it, as in good for you sort of thing to have read, as opposed to necessarily an enjoyable read.
Yeah, it's not one that I like sat down and it was one where I really got my like academic brain on. Like I have the Norton critical edition of the main text, and I was literally just there with like a highlighter and sticky notes and things. Like it was not
every second thing. Yeah, that's kind of that's how I approach just the limited sections in the Norton. The same thing. I couldn't actually read it without my pen.
So you have to like underline bits to try and even just focus, because there's so much going on.
Yeah, and that's fine. You know, that's a fine thing to be doing, and I absolutely have no problem with that. But it's not a relaxing lie down and have a read when you feel in the mood kind of deal.
No, definitely not. No,
not at all. Not even close. But no. I'm glad I've done it though. I'm glad I'm now aware of this thing that I keep hearing about all the time. To have experienced.
What do you think about what we learn about the author? So the Norton does include the bit that's like, so there's all these different manuscripts and things, and the main translation that we have is of the B version, but then there's also like this little bit that's taken from, I think, a different manuscript that's like about the author himself. Where is it?
Where do you mean?
Let me find it. From the C text, the dreamer meets conscience and reason. It says, thus I awoke as God's my witness when I lived in Cornhill. And they think that this is like, this whole thing about him is actually about the actual author, like all that we know about the author. Right. Kit and I lived in a cottage, clothed like a loller, and all this stuff about him. I thought that was kind of fun, because it's kind of fun to piece together like who the actual author is. Yeah. And that they think that his name is Will Langland because of some little play on words somewhere here.
It's a bit like being a detective, isn't it? And that fascination with the writers of anything is, I mean, it's always there, isn't it? People, we naturally want to know about the person who's penned something we're reading. Yeah. And I think
it's someone who is like smart and is trying to like understand how they can still contribute to the world even though they're not able to do like hard labor.
Yeah.
He says, I'm too weak to work with sickle or scythe, and too long, believe me, for any low stooping, so he's really tall, or labouring as a labourer to last any while. My father and my friends provided me with schooling, so he's educated. If I must live by labour and my livelihood, the labour I should live by is the one I learnt best, so his education.
Yeah.
And his religion. For my conscience, I can see.
I think, Rosie, always this not always, but this tradition of connection between or questioning of someone who is educated and whose interest lies in the writing process and the land and tilling the land, and that kind of interesting sort of parallel, growing something and a kind of
finding a different purpose to actually doing the physical work, but like, because I think I'm imagining back then as well, you'd have to justify yourself a bit more if you were an intellectual rather than a labourer. Because
I suppose so, but yes, I suppose that's right. But I'm thinking that it's always been a vexed question or an interesting line of pursuit for writers, I think, or not always, but it has been a traditional line of pursuit, like Heaney, that same sort of idea, is the doing something physical and growing and ploughing and the land, is that more admirable than a work that is intellectual but not physical at all?
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
I think that like what they're trying to say here is that like both of them are equally valid, but you have to actually be serving a purpose somehow.
Yeah.
So you can't be idle. It's all very against idleness.
Idleness is the worst.
Everyone's got their place to like play, like to do something in society, and that people who are like lazy and just like pay for things
and don't contribute
are not going to go to heaven, is what he's trying to say.
Then this whole kind of notion, I mean, that's always the idea of a utopia, isn't it? Like this, Sir Thomas More, it's that same idea.
Well, we're going to get that in, I think that is actually the first text that we do next year.
Is it?
Utopia.
Utopia.
Yeah. So you'll be good if you teach that, so you'll be like miles ahead of me on that one.
Yeah, but I think it's really interesting, that idea. I mean, it's always going to be a fascinating look, because no utopia can ever be achieved, can it?
Well, in here, so the little bit that we have is when Piers, which I think we should talk about Piers more as a character as well.
Yeah.
But when he's going to show all these people how to get to the pathway to truth. And so he says, but first you've got to like plow my lands and stuff, like help me on the land. And they all get assigned chores relating to like where they are in society and what they're capable of doing. And then they all gradually like start to slack off. People are like feigning illness or whatever and just being like, having excuses for not working. So then he says, okay, I'm going to bring in hunger, because that's the only way to make people work.
Yeah.
And then they do go back to work after a while, but then even then they stop. So it's like nothing will actually make people
really make people
nothing's going to stop them from being like that.
Hunger's a major incentive, but
then there was like something you had to then feed hunger, so then hunger slacked off on his job, and then the
cycle goes on. But
so yes, I thought that was interesting. That was kind of like a fun little snippet. So Piers himself is this weird character. So he's a plowman. Piers Plowman. But he also seems to be like all these religious figures in one. Like he definitely is described as Jesus at one point.
Yes.
And then possibly also like Moses and a few other people, I think.
Yep.
At various points. But there's that whole bit about, did you read the bit about the crucifixion?
Yes. And then thought back about the wound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting that there was like, you got the whole crucifixion story, and then you also get to see Jesus going down to hell,
which is really funny that I never ever would think of that.
No, I was thinking of Dante.
Yeah. never do I think of Jesus and hell as a thing.
Yeah, but he has to go down to let all the people out that he's now like.
Yeah.
Pardon.
I actually found that absolutely interesting, that part. I really that was brand new, that sort of idea to me.
Yeah. And then the evil angels, what do you call them? Devils. What are evil angels? Devils. The devils are all arguing amongst themselves as to whether you can actually pardon sinners and like whether they can be freed. And it's like it's Lucifer and Satan as like separate people, which is interesting as well. And then turns out that yes, God can do whatever he wants, and if he wants to let people free, he can let people free.
And he can. Yeah. Did you have a favorite part of the parts, which are called, what are they called again? Passes?
Passes, because passes stands for step, so it's like a journey. Yes.
Did you have a favorite section, favorite step?
From these ones, I think
from the Norton.
I think probably actually the Jesus part at the end, the crucifixion, because that was so dramatic.
I think so too.
So it all kind of culminates towards that point.
Yep. And it was dramatic, and it was great. Yeah, I agree. I like that part of it as well. Yeah.
But actually, I think the Norton did a really good job in selecting the most interesting parts in general, because there was a lot in here that was really quite dull.
Yeah.
the other passes.
So they did a good job.
Yeah, each of those like little scenes is actually quite interesting, I thought. It's just like, confusing, but especially like when they have these names of people that are like, their whole name is, it's like a compound word, I guess, like a massive compound word. So this one is speak the truth, so it must be done, and not in any other way, not for any man's asking. That's a person's name. Like, no wonder we're confused.
That'd be a long one to spell out on a phone call, wouldn't it? That one.
Yeah. Covet not men's cattle nor their wives, and none of your neighbours serving men so as to harm them.
Yep. Signed. Bye. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah.
I wonder, like, okay, so I didn't this edition has got the original, I guess, Old English on the left and then the translation on the right, which is quite cool. Yeah. But I, like, honestly, if I'd been spending more time with it, I probably could have had a look at how it was, like, translated, and actually spent more time looking between the two, but I just read the right side, so I didn't really pay attention. But it would be interesting to see what those, like, compound names look like in Old English. Are they just as lengthy and weird? Probably. I mean, I can't see why they would translate it
to make it more clumsy. No, they wouldn't.
Yeah, like, maybe it is supposed to be like that. It's just weird. Like, not really sure why they do that.
No.
Yeah, there's one here where it's love to live in lechery. Yeah, leaf to love in lechery. Whatever it is in Old English.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And do you think, Rosie, I mean, how much knowledge do you think you need to have of the Bible?
For these sections, not much. I don't think you need to have really any in nothing specific anyway in these bits, because they are the big stories that you all know about, like the crucifixion. And like everyone knows the basic premise of like do good to other people. Like that's not hard to understand. I'm sure there are like biblical allusions and things that I didn't pick up.
Yeah.
But I don't think you need it.
No. And it's really quite nice to read little extracts and quotations from the Bible in another context, isn't it? All in all, a kind of good for you read, I think, is how I'd sum it up. And it's a really nice, good thing to have in your repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of feel a sense of accomplishment to have read it.
Yeah, but not exactly one that we'll love for years to come.
I mean, you're not going to forget it, put it that way. You're not going to forget that you've read it, and you're not going to forget what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's impressive in that it's a beginning of something, of a So all of those things, I think, make it a worthwhile exercise.
And you know what? I also like that it feels more original than some of the ones we've been reading, because as much as I find these stories in Gower and etc. like more fun, I guess, because they're more dramatic and more like violent and things. So, you know, it's more readable, I guess. They're all taken from like Ovid. So
yes, and that almost is a little bit on the annoying side. It's like, I know exactly. Whereas this feels very much like an original
thought. It feels like it's this guy like actually trying to come to terms with what's going on in the world and like how corrupt the church is, and trying to figure out what he wants out of his religion. And
then he's a precursor for work to come after. So you certainly have a sense of that when you're reading it, which I think which is good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So when we go here, Rosie?
There's this weird little section that's Middle English incarnation and crucifixion lyrics, which will take like 2 seconds for us to read. So I sort of feel like we should combine that with Julian of Norwich.
Yes.
Next week.
Yep, I think that sounds good.
Julian is an anchoress, so we're coming back to the concept of anchoress as an active hearing from one, which is cool.
That'll be really good. Yeah. Really good.
So I think
okay, we do that, and then the
Marjorie Kemp
one.
The week after, I think, because I'm going to read the full text, so you got to allow me a little bit of time. They're like,
okay. So all right, we'll do that the week after, and that'll be interesting because it's a woman.
Yeah,
so it's a bit.
So is Julian. That's just a male name because Julian. I think that's what they did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You know, like had named after saints and stuff. So I think Julian of Norwich is actually a woman as well.
Okay, no, I haven't gone at all there. I haven't looked at it at all, as you can tell. So I didn't do that. Okay.
And she's one of the anchoresses, the women that get locked in the cell.
Yes.
And she had visions, so it's all like her actual like spiritual visions and things. So we're actually hearing like it's autobiographical.
Okay,
stuff.
Good.
Quite cool.
That sounds enjoyable. All right, that's for next week.
You know, I actually said a little story about Julian of Norwich. I ordered the book on Amazon and it came like quite damaged. So I told them like, you know, my book's damaged, and they sent me another copy. And then I was like, now I've got 2 of these books and no one in my life is ever going to want the other one. Like I'm not going to be able to give this way to anyone. And I actually found a colleague who has been always wanting to read this.
No.
So yeah, I was like, do you by any chance want to talk about Norwich? And she's like, actually, yeah. So there you go. I've kept it for her. If she's watching this.
That's good.
Still here.
That's really good.
Yeah. Yep. So someone does want to read it other than us.
Who would have thought, Rosie? Who would have thought?
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, yeah, let us know if you have plowed through the Piers Plowman, and if you have enjoyed it. And yeah, look forward to catching up on Julian of Norwich next time.
Yeah, sounds good. See you then.
Thanks for watching, everyone. See you later. Bye.